This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Hey, it is Long Shots, golf betting podcast here on the VSiN Podcast Network. I am Matt Brown. That is Wes Reynolds. That is Kelley Bydlon, and we are to another major championship. Everybody going to be out here in this one, except one of the guys we have bet a ton of times this year. We will, of course, get to that, guys, as we did last week and kind of started with all of this now that we are over on VSiN. Hello, everybody watching us over on VSiN or listening over on VSiN. We'll go ahead and give kind of like one overarching thought from last week, and mine is censored. I can't do a big middle finger to the camera for yet another second place finish this season, so that's mine. That's my one takeaway is Kristoffer Reitan or whatever it is or something like that. You steal a win from me this week, and you couldn't get it done a couple of weeks ago, and I had you second place in the team event. So you messed me up twice now. So thanks for that. Great. Wes, you have two gripes about last week.
I do. Nicolai Højgaard, one of my two runner-ups. That's my second on him. Of course, Gary Woodland ran away and hid from him in the final round at the Houston Open. And then Rickie Fowler, what a great story that would have been. Had the share of the lead, and just he hit a bullet to like 6 feet, where it's like, okay, easy birdie here. He's going to go to 15, and he's in the midst of like the green mile, whereas everybody else has still got to go. So it's like maybe that's going to get in a playoff or even hold for a win, and then doesn't make that putt, gives one back, ends up finishing another runner-up, but a good tournament for Rickie Fowler. So Kristoffer Reitan gets the win. Alex Fitzpatrick also had a look, but yeah, disappointed to get two runners-up last week there at the Truist. Thought we handicapped it right.
Yeah, I think we did as well, Kelley. What is your takeaway there from last week?
Well, I didn't have many runners in the mix like you two, so I would say my biggest takeaway is kind of how you jokingly led it, Matt, is that Chris Reitan, I guess, is a name I need to know and learn now because he is not going away, and it reminds me very much of Yellow Mirage earlier in the season. We're like, that's not going to matter in a couple weeks, and it sure did. And Chris Reitan, good for him. It seems like he is playing some great golf right now and is on a leaderboard every single week at some point.
He, by the way, is the European equivalent of Maverick McNeely, apparently, like astonishingly wealthy. Father's a big corporate titan, so now he gets even more money.
Good for him.
Yeah, good.
Always like an underdog story.
Yes.
If you are watching and not listening, Kelley does have the leaderboard pulled up, and I guess the one thing we will talk about this week is there might be something to take away from this tournament into this tournament this week, because if you look at that leaderboard, we were wondering, softer conditions makes it easier to play for guys from longer distances and neutralize the fact that of needing to be a bomber. And certainly you can see that here on this leaderboard. Alex Fitzpatrick, JJ Spaun, Tommy Fleetwood, Sung Jae, Harry Hall, all of these guys, not bombers, but when you're hitting long irons to receptive greens, you don't have to be a bomber, and so maybe that comes into play this week as well as we move on to the PGA Championship. And this is a tournament, West, that rotates courses, so we do have to do our homework. We got to dig in. This isn't one of those, let's go to last year's model and try to figure things out like we do with a lot of these. And so tell us a little bit about what we're going to get at Aronimink.
Yeah, Aronimink, just outside of Philadelphia. Donald Ross design, Gil Hanse, as typical, really, with the PGA Championship and U.S. Open Road in recent years, the go-to guy for restorations. He did this in 2018, by the way. And really the biggest change, if you look back to when this course was played last at the BMW Championship, I believe, in 2018 in the FedEx Cup playoffs, what they did mainly was they increased the bunkers. 74 bunkers they had. Now there's 176. And it's not just around the green. You have these little clusters in the various fairways. So tried to go back to a little bit of the true concept of the original Ross design. Shorter course than we normally see. Now, short by modern day standards, it's still just a smidge under 7,400 yards, 7,394 to be exact, par 70. Interesting thing about this design, all the holes are routed differently across ridges and valleys. So you're going to have like different angles and uneven lies on a lot of these approach shots. Bent grass fairways, relatively generous, 32 yards on average, but they did grow out the rough. Fescue Poa, 3.5 to 4. inches. So not quite U.S. Open, but still enough. Not a lot of water here, just 3 water holes with the bunkers and the rough being the main defense here. But the story, and we're going to get into that when we get into the stats, guys, I think what's going to determine this is how you perform on these greens. Now, you look at these greens on the surface, 8,200 square feet on average. So these are large. So these are easy greens to hit. But they're not easy greens to hold necessarily. They're those typical Donald Ross crown, you could call them turtleback greens, where you have a lot of these tightly mown chipping areas, runoffs, collection areas, a lot of contours on these greens. So lag putting will be important. And they usually tilt from back to front is what you're going to see. 12.5 to 13 on the stem. So not lightning fast, but still fast enough. What you're going to see, I think a lot of these players, by the way, they want to leave those putts below the hole. They want to leave them uphill because the downhill putts can be really slick here. So that's something you're going to have to be concerned with. Front 9 is almost 200 yards shorter than the back 9, so it is a little bit more scoreable. Back 9, difficult holes, 10 to 12. And then you have a real interesting dichotomy here because you do have a drivable par 4 at 385 on 13. And then after a par 3, you get a 546 par 4 on number 15, which is one of the longest par 4s they're going to see all year. And then a par 5 on the next hole on 16, just 555. So a lot of interesting holes here. This should be, I think, a pretty interesting course. Maybe kind of profiles closer to Oak Hill. If you recall where the PGA Championship was played in 2023, I don't think it'll be as difficult as Oak Hill was that year, but Oak Hill in Rochester, New York is another Donald Ross design. So they want this thing to play firm and fast, but when we get to the weather, they are going to get some rain on Wednesday and Thursday. So I think that this is going to play softer than the PGA of America, and clearly some of the course designers and organizers want it to play.
Yeah, Kelley, as I really dug into this course, some of the interesting stuff about it is just like the difference in the 2 9s. The par 4s on the front 9 are actually fairly short, and then you get to these super long par 4s on the back 9. So it's like kind of a completely different course from a par 4 standpoint on the front 9 and the back 9. And you look at this and you go, well, how can they average 430-ish, 435 on the front 9 and this still be 7,400 yards? And really, the length in this course is on the par 3s. I mean, these are super long par 3s, and it's a course that's going to be super demanding from that standpoint. And the only 2 par 5s is going to make it where you got to score on those. About the only gettable holes that are going to be 100% gettable on the course, and certainly depending on weather and how it all plays out. As you looked into this course, anything really stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit on it where the scoring is going to come. Only 2 par 5s, so something to keep in mind. The par 3s and par 4s are going to be a challenge throughout. I think it's going to be really interesting to me to see how much distance ends up mattering off the tee here. I think Wes broke it down well. I imagine on the green, around the green, scrambling is going to come into play a lot for this event. I think we're going to have some tough, lengthy approach shots that these guys are going to be challenged with. But with all the bunkers scattered throughout, especially with the fairway, it's going to be interesting to see how guys attack things off the tee. You do have rough grown out 3.5, 4 inches like Wes hit on. You're going to want to stay out of that. I think accuracy off the tee is going to end up mattering a little bit more this week, but with those greens being so tough to hold, like Wes brought up, we mention this as much as we can. Further you can hit it off the tee, it's going to be a shorter approach shot coming in, a little bit more height you can put on that shot, make it a little bit softer going into the green. So I think distance will matter. How much, I think, is going to be something that I'm going to have to find out during the tournament.
One little point I want to jump in here. This is from Paul Hodawanich, who is a writer for PGAtour.com. Hopefully I got that pronunciation right. He walked the front 9, and you kind of hit on it and alluded to it, Matt and Kelley, that it is a shorter front 9. So he tracked what the players were hitting on each hole in their practice rounds. Driver wedge, driver wedge, driver wedge, driver short iron, driver or fairway wood wedge. So that's what you're going to see here. I think a lot, especially on the front 9, you are going to see very short wedge shots here. So I thought that was pretty good intel. And then you have, of course, the uneven lies. You've got side hill lies, and it's a little risk reward like Pete Dye, even though this is Donald Ross, where if you hit it to the safe wide part of the fairway, it's a tougher angle into the green. But if you maybe take on the tougher angle, you've got a much easier approach.
As we head to the odds board, no shock, it is going to be Scottie Scheffler at the top of the odds board after his ridiculous run that he is on with the outright seconds. Now, one of the things I will say, if you are looking to bet this week, this is actually a very weird shop around week because Kelley has DraftKings pulled up. DraftKings wants you to bet everybody but Scottie Scheffler. They must have a ridiculous amount of liability on Scottie Scheffler because you're getting really great numbers on some of these other golfers at DraftKings where they have the market low on Scottie Scheffler by a decent amount. FanDuel sitting at plus 480, DraftKings sitting at plus 385. So a big time shop around week when it comes to who you want to bet. Certainly at the top of the odds board, create some value towards the middle of the odds board. Most places you are going to see Rory McIlroy come in as your second shot. Since Kelley has the DraftKings pulled up there. If you're watching this, I'll just go from the MGM odds so we can at least give a couple of different big national books out there. 450 on Scheffler over at MGM, 850 on Rory, 910 over at DraftKings. So again, you can see kind of wanting you to bet somebody else here in that one. Cam Young, Jon Rahm, Xander Schauffele, Ludvig Åberg, Bryson DeChambeau, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood gets us through our 20s, and then we get into the really longer shots, Kelley. It's an interesting odds boards this week for sure.
Yeah, big drop after Tommy. I think that's fair as we talk through golfers here. I think there's kind of that a clear separation at a couple different points, but after Tommy Fleetwood for me for sure.
When we come back, we will get into the stats that matter, what we plugged into the models, what those spit out. We'll get to Wes Reynolds' outright plays. Don't go anywhere. It is Long Shots. Welcome back to Long Shots. Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, Kelley Bydlon here on the VSiN Podcast Network. Just went through what Aronimink we think at least is going to look like here. We will talk weather in just a second, and then we'll talk about what we put into our models here and how that all plays out. Our usual disclaimer, we are not coders. We are leaning on the work of all the people out there. We go in, we weight the stuff, we put the stats that we think that matter, and then we try to interpret that information and put that into bets. But again, we're not coding these things. So shout out to all the people out there that are doing the hard work for us there, creating those skeletons for us to go in and do that. So Wes, I will start with you as we get into some of the stats here. I think it's pretty interesting, and I alluded to it in the first segment, which is last week we thought driving distance was going to matter a ton. It was a long course, and we put in a decent amount of driving distance and stuff like that into our models. What turned out is driving distance actually didn't matter in that tournament. If you look, it played more towards accuracy because of how soft the conditions were. It allowed for guys that were hitting 7 irons in to still hold the greens and have good birdie looks, as opposed to where we're usually wanting guys that are hitting wedges and 9 irons and stuff like that in. And so I do wonder if how we all went about putting stuff into our model this week, given what we think might be the weather situation in this, which Kelley, I don't know if you have that ready for us to pop up here, but it does like there's got some rain yesterday, could be some rain on Wednesday, maybe a little bit more. Again, this is we're recording this on Tuesday midday, so there's plenty of time for this to change. But weatherman Kelley, it looks like it could be a little wet out there.
Yeah, a little rain Wednesday night into Thursday morning is what we're looking at, and maybe some strong gusts. I mean, obviously, update, check in on this if you're making bets. We always say this. We've got to make bets early. You don't have to make bets until right before the tournament starts, or even during the tournament if you want. But yeah, some of the gusts, it looks like possibly early Thursday and Friday, getting up there into the 20s. So something to keep an eye out on. Yeah, I think most interesting, though, how much rain do they get in Wednesday into Thursday, and how does that affect things as we get the tournament started?
So Wes, let's get to it. Stats that matter for you and what you plugged into the model this week.
Yeah, I think if you're going with incoming form, and I have some trends in my article that'll be up at vsin.com, it has been rewarding incoming form, like guys that have really played well leading into this. So tee to green probably is a best statistical indicator of that, just as kind of an overarching stat. Approach, I think, obviously going to be important here, because not hitting the greens necessarily, but hitting them on the preferred contours, I think, and leaving yourself the right angle to avoid those 3-putts, where lag putting is going to be important. So I did use 3-putt avoidance as well. But before I get to that, in terms of the approach, I know some are kind of looking at the 150 to 200, not saying that's not usable, but as I mentioned in the first segment, you saw a lot of driver wedge into this. And keep this in mind with how Quail Hollow played last week. And Quail Hollow, by the way, is around 300 yards longer in the Aronimink, Aronimink rather. So I looked at the proximity buckets and the wedges, like 100 to 125 and 125 to 150, instead of the 50 to 75 or the 175 to 200. So that's where I looked at that. In terms of off the tee, you could look at good drives gained. I looked at distance from the edge of the fairway, which measures the average distance from the edge of the fairway when the player hits the fairway. So you get a lot of crossover with that good drives gained. But as I mentioned at the top, I think around the green and on the green is going to decide this tournament really more than anything off the tee or anything approach because of the challenges of these greens. So strokes gained around the green, scrambling. You could go strokes gained bent grass. They haven't seen a lot of bent grass. They do, of course, see it at Augusta, but, pure bent grass here at Aronimink. So the slopes are going to test your lag putting. You've got a lot of 3-putts looming everywhere, so use that. A couple scoring stats, use bogey avoidance because you are going to have a chance to make bogeys, even though we think kind of mid-teens under par may end up being the winning score. That's at least the consensus among the players and the caddies. They think about 16 under is going to win this thing, and I think that they're right. If it's firm and fast, you're going to see 10, 11 under, but because of the soft conditions that Kelley brought up, I think you're going to get kind of mid-teens, 15, 16 under par. So I did look at the par 4 scoring because you've got a wide variety, like you pointed out earlier, Matt. Short par 4s on the front 9, long par 4s on the back 9. So you could look at par 4 scoring or par 4 performance. Par 4 performance, by the way, is the cumulative under par on par 4. So keep that in mind because some guys have played more tournaments than others. But that's basically what I looked at. If you want to look at course correlations, I think Oak Hill is certainly one that I mentioned earlier. Oakmont, Olympia Fields, Winged Foot, some of the recent major venues, Philadelphia Cricket, where you had the last year's Truist, Muirfield Village, and then some of the other Donald Ross designs that we see on the tour. Pinehurst, number 2, where the U.S. Open was 2 years ago, East Lake for the Tour Championship, Sedgefield for the Wyndham. If you want to kind of create a profile of who plays well on those courses, that's certainly something I think worthy of including in any model you might have.
Kelley, what about you? Anything different from Wes?
No, a lot of the same. Off the tee, did do strokes gained off the tee small, some distance, but not huge. Did emphasize with some of the accuracy stats a little bit more. So good drives, good drives, accuracy, that type of stuff. And then heavy on approach. Wes mentioned it, a little bit of par 4 scoring. You get a mix of the par 4s. Do a mix of par 4, so I went light on par 4 scoring. I actually stayed away from the proximity buckets, partially because what you're talking about, Wes. Just I think that with the different setups you're going to get on the front 9, back 9, different length par 4s. I'm wondering how wide a variety we could get of approach shots coming into these greens, different distances. And then I'm with you, though. A lot of, around the green, scrambling, bogey avoidance, strokes gained putting, some of the lengthy putting stats, bonus putting, 3-putt avoidance, factored that all in. I'm with Wes. I think that's going to be a big separator this week.
Yeah, I'm kind of keeping with that trend. Y'all know I'm kind of doing this for 2026. So I've kind of given up on the proximity bucket things. I think that stat is noisy. And so I'll see at the end of the year, well, if it pays off or not. But I've kind of gone more into that like opportunities gained, because if you're inside of 15 feet, it's basically how good are you with your wedges and short irons as it is anyway. Not a ton of guys are, going to be within 15 feet with a 6 iron or 5 iron or whatever as it is anyway. So it's kind of a catch-all stat, but I mean, I also think there's dudes are so good that, they're there. They can do that with a 9 iron. They can do that with an 8 iron. And so I've kind of gone more the opportunities gained deal, which is looks at birdie inside of 15 feet. So that's where I went with this, but same deal, lots of scrambling, lots of around the green stuff, basically just overall tee to green as well with some stuff. And I did put in a little bit of total driving. Obviously, distance always helps. I don't think distance is going to be a big thing here. And when I say a little bit of total driving, I'm talking about like 5% of the 100% of the model. So like pretty small, but it was at least something for me to look at if it was a tiebreaker or something like that for some people out there. But I think accuracy is going to be the big thing here this week. You can't bomb and gouge a place like this because it doesn't do you any good. If everybody is hitting short iron, it doesn't matter. Like Bryson hitting from 80 yards and somebody else hitting from 120 doesn't matter. Like his 40 extra yards doesn't matter. Like that, the big difference is when Bryson's 120 and someone else is 160. That's when it matters. But it doesn't matter if he's 80 and someone else is 120. There's no big difference there in that one. So that's kind of where I am there with that one. Wes, we will obviously get to all of your plays and carry over into the next segment. Why don't we get started here with who's the shortest guy you have on your card this week?
It is not Scottie Scheffler. I am going to play him top 5. There's like plus 130 out there. By the way, no Rory on my card this week, and this comes out as we're recording. He stopped his practice round actually after 3 holes, been bothered with that foot blister. He dealt with it. The Truist did not play well last week, so I'm not going to really have any Rory probably exposure on the card, but I am going to have some Scottie. Feel like I got to have some. My shortest shot, though, is Cameron Young, who's been very good to me. I saw as high as 1650 at DraftKings. You're seeing a lot of 12 to 1s, 13 to 1s out there. He's been the best player in the world for the last 3 months. Like Scheffler and McIlroy rightfully 1-2 for what they've accumulated over the last couple of years in that world ranking system. But Cameron Young's been the best player in the world for 3 months. Even last week when he was off, he was still top 10. Won at Sedgefield, the Donald Ross design, so has experience there. And I think this is the last frontier, right, for this guy is to win a major. And that's what he has to do. And I think that this is where he's going to come close here. So it's not the great future price that you might have had a couple months ago if you bet him. But still, I think a pretty fair price on Cameron Young for who's clearly number 3 in the world right now.
We'll get to all of your plays here on the other side. But guys, you've done your homework on the PGA Championship field. Now prove it in the VSiN High Stakes PGA Championship contest over on Splash Sports. Yeah, we got another one of those big ones. $500 entry fee, $50,000 in guaranteed prizes. It's fantasy tiers built for golf bettors like you guys out there at splashsports.com/VSiN to enter up to 3 entries per person. Of course, lineups lock when the tournament starts. So 7 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. You don't want to wait until then. Get in before that. You get 6 different golfers. Your top 5 scores count. So you get to drop your lowest score there in that one. Again, $500 entry fee, $50,000 in guaranteed. Splashsports.com/VSIN to get in on that contest. Welcome back to Long Shots. Matt, Wes, and Kelley. We got Wes's shortest shot on the board. It is going to be Cam Young. As I look at the odds board right now, as we are recording this, there was a flash actually over at DraftKings, did drop from 1650 to 16, but still by far the best number out there in the market. Cam Young taking a lot of money over at FanDuel, MGM, I guess specifically Caesars, where he is 8 to 1. 12,
wow.
Yeah, 12 to 1. At MGM, 12 to 1 at FanDuel, but you can still get a 16 to 1, at least as of this recording right now over at DraftKings. So like we said, a big time shop around week when it comes to putting in your betting tickets. Kelley, I saw you smile there. Sometimes Caesars has good numbers like on the longer shot dudes, but like if you want to bet a favorite, Caesars is not the place you want to go.
Yeah, you ain't going to Caesars very often if that's what you're looking to do. It is, hey, we say shop around, practice what you preach, right? I pull up Caesars app every single week for golf betting. I think I could count on one hand how many times I've spent longer than 5 minutes on it, though. Some
of the longer shot numbers are actually bigger than everywhere else, but it's like, I mean,
it should be. Yeah.
When are you getting? Yeah, I mean, when are you getting home these 150 to 1s? Where like
we know these top guys are going to get. Yeah, the top guys are going to get bet, so it's like let's just cut them anyway, since bettors are going to bet them anyway.
It's wild, but again, it is a big time shop around week, so guys definitely do that as people get a lot of interest in the PGA Championship, and books will have certain liability on guys, and they'll be begging you to bet some of these other people. Like we said, DraftKings doesn't want your money on Scottie Scheffler, but they'll take your money on everybody else. Wes, let's continue on with your betting card here.
Yeah, second choice, I have Ludvig Åberg at 22 to 1, 8th last week at Quail Hollow, 5th top 10 in his last 6, 4 top 5s in his last 5. He's always near the top in tee to green. Driver's the biggest weapon, but he was 3rd on stroke tee and approach last week at the Truist. I think the biggest jump for Ludvig in terms of his game this year has been around the green. He was 129th on tour last year in stroke tee and around the green. This year he's 17th. Now, around the green has been good. The putting has been up and down, but the guy took to the bent grass greens at Augusta 2 years ago on his debut, where he finished second and then was seventh the following year. Not so great this time around. It's really kind of been his only clunky finish in the last couple months. But Ludvig at 22-1 for me. And then one I didn't think I was going to be on, because I've been teasing him and saying, okay, U.S. Open is where you want to maybe target this guy. But I'm going more with the course fit here than I'm going with certainly some of the modeling, and that's Tommy Fleetwood, who is as high as 29-1, high 20s, pretty much everywhere in the market. He's got 5 top 10s and 2 top 5s, but he's been a disappointment based on how he finished 2025, where he finally won on U.S. soil, won the FedEx Cup, then went and won on the DP World Tour a couple times, didn't contend at the Masters. But if you look at Aronimink and then Shinnecock Hills for the U.S. Open, where he finished second to Brooks in 2018. These are the courses I think better suited for the fairway Jesus, maybe to get his first major championship. 4th around the green, 9th for driving accuracy. Of those top 10 on the odds board, I think he's a little bit under the radar this week because he's kind of disappointed when he's been a little more widely tipped. So I'll buy the bounce here on Tommy Fleetwood. And then, by the way, I am looking for somebody in that 40-ish, that mid-range price to maybe add to make it an even 7. Maybe Patrick Cantlay. He's certainly a consider, but haven't bet him yet. Longer shots I did bet, and I found him as high as 65-1, and I still think he's in the 50-60 range everywhere. Russell Henley, who's a top 10 player in the world that you're getting in the 60+1 range. I know he's never won a major, and he's an outlier to that age trend at 37 years old. It's usually been young guys, by the way, 26 to like 32. Some players are late bloomers, though, and I think Henley is starting to become a proven commodity in majors. 5 top 10s, last 7 majors, career best T3 last month at the Masters, which you would think maybe is a little bit too long for him, where he briefly had a share of that lead in the final round. Second in accuracy, and on a shorter layout by modern standards like here at Aronimink, I think that's a good fit. 6 top 10s, last 7 starts on Donald Ross designs, including a 7th at Pinehurst number 2, 2024, which is a little bit longer, certainly, than this layout. So Russell Henley, 65-1. Rickie Fowler, I'm going to go back to him. DraftKings had the best price, and we talked about that earlier. Playing the best golf that he's played in several years, consecutive top 10s, RBC and Cadillac and Doral, and then runner-up last week at the Truist, where I actually thought he was going to win the tournament. I thought he's going to make this birdie in post 15 and make these guys dealing with the pressure of getting their first individual PGA Tour win have to go at him, and then gave one away late. Solid record on Donald Ross, runner-up to Martin Keimer in 2014 at Pinehurst number 2, 8th and 13th the last time he's played at Aronimink, 12th for putting. So I think he's going to figure out these greens. And a lot of guys, I think, are really going to struggle with these greens this week. But I'm going to trust Rickie here, and I'm going to stick with him. I've been riding him. I've been on him the last 2 weeks. So let's see if he can finally get it home. I certainly think he's going to be on that leaderboard on Sunday. And then Kurt Kitayama, 90-1. Solid season this year at the runner-up at Genesis, back-to-back top 10s in Hilton Head and in Miami. T19 last week, but 4th on approach. And I think what you're seeing with Kitayama, where his improvement, I mentioned about Ludvig around the green, Kurt Kitayama's improvement is not in his distance because he's a bomber, but it's his accuracy, I think, has been a lot better. Best major championship, by the way, he had was T4 3 years ago at Oak Hill, which is another Donald Ross Northeast design that I mentioned. So Kurt Kitayama is going to be one of those sneaky guys that I think could get up there, and may add one more in the 40 or 50 range, because I kind of want somebody in that mid-range, and that'll close out the outright card.
Of course, all of these will be over on VSiN.com on the picks page as well. Kelley Bydlon, let's get started with your card.
Now, Wes can have all the mid-range and long-range guys, because I am living at the top of the board this week, fellas. It all is... Right. I started with Cameron Young. That was the first bet, so I'm right there with you, Wes. Do we need a pod play? Matt, are you in?
No, actually, it's very interesting. I have a feeling I'm going to just trash all of y'all's plays. So,
okay.
I think so stick around for the final segment, because I think I'm actually just going to do that.
I am in on Cam. I'm right there with you, Wes. I just couldn't ignore everything that he's done recently and where we're at. I just talked about around the green with Ludvig. I think Cameron Young really improving there too. Has been really impressive what he's done in the majors. 7 top 10s, 4 top 5s, last 17 majors now at this point. He's playing really quality. So I played him. The only other outright bet I made, I went for Scottie Scheffler. I played Scheffler at 5-1 here in town. Like Matt said, shop around. There are wildly different Scottie Scheffler numbers out there. 5-1 over at Circa, though, here in Las Vegas. So I had 2 outrights. Scottie Scheffler 5-1, Cameron Young 14-1. Not adding anything more than that. Did play a little bit of Cameron Young in the winter without Scheffler market too, getting greedy, I guess. Hopefully good cash too. That'd be cool. And then I'm into placements. Placement markets. I have top 10s on Cameron Young. I am with you on Ludvig there. I played a top 10 on Ludvig at 2-1. You broke it down well, Wes. I don't think I need to say anything more about him. And then the other guy you bet as well, Rickie Fowler. I'm in a Rickie Fowler top 10. I played him a bit earlier in the season. I'd been off of him recently. You brought it up, though, man. Really, these past 3 weeks, 3 top 10 finishes. The approach numbers are really, really impressive. That's what really stuck out to me here over those last 3 finishes. So I'm going to aim high with Rickie. He's been a little inconsistent this year, so I'm just going to play that top 10 on him instead of covering it down with some lower placement finishes as well. Patrick Cantlay, I'm back on in the top 20 market, plus 175. Playing Cantlay there, been on off him. The withdrawal came into play with him over the past couple weeks. Been a guy I've been trying to figure out, I feel like, for the past month or so. The approach and around the green numbers.
I've been trying to figure him out for 3 years.
Yeah, I think longer than that, man. I think longer than that. Yeah. But yeah, T10 at the Truist for him, 8th at RBC Heritage, 12th at the Masters, T7 at the Valspar. A lot of quality finishes for him recently. Hope he keeps that up. And then I'm going to take a swing with a guy I don't trust very much and have not played a lot this year. JJ Spaun, top 20. I'm going to go there with him. He's been playing much better recently. T5 at the Truist, T14 at the Cadillac. I missed the cut at the Masters. We had that win at the Valero before that. The irons look like they're locked in. He's gained on approach in 8 straight. Has gained off the tee in 4 of the last 5. See how much that matters this week. And then he gained with the putter last week, which is a good sign after kind of a rough start to the season with the flat stick. So JJ Spaun there. And then one of our pod favorites, top 20, Alex Smalley. I'm going to play him at 4-1. Let's see if he can keep up with the big boys here. But it's 4 straight top 20 cashes for him. The approach and putting numbers have been awesome. He had one terrible approach round last week that kind of blew up his tournament. We like Alex Smalley. We've been betting him a ton. I'm going to take a shot of 4-1 here on the top 20 market. And then real quick, some matchups I have made. I will be making others, though. Cameron Young over Jon Rahm. I'm not meaning to pick on Jon Rahm, but I was a little surprised at these numbers. 116, I'm laying with Cameron Young over Rahm. And then I played Matt Fitzpatrick at plus 140 over Rahm, too. I just a little surprised you were getting that big of a bang for your buck there on Fitzy. And then Russell Henley. I'm on a matchup, Russell Henley, even money over Siwoo Kim. I think Siwoo could be good this week. I'm not going to doubt. We've seen a lot of good Siwoo this year, but Henley is the dog there. I was a little bit surprised. I'm not going to go stronger than that, but with you on him, at least in the matchup market.
Yeah, we all are on Rickie in various forms. I did the top 20 at 2-1 on Rickie, but again, I don't know what his win equity necessarily is, but I definitely think that he can be around. We'll get to my picks here on the other side. Again, remember, guys, go in splashsports.com/VSiN if you want to get in that big $500 contest, 50,000 guaranteed over there in that one. My bets when we get to the other side. Welcome back to Long Shots. Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, Kelley Bydlon. We get Kelly's picks. We got Wes's picks. Now it's time for mine. Like I said, I did join them, Rickie Fowler, but I have top 20, 2-1 on him. From that, we can start with the placement market stuff. Siwoo Kim, top 10 at plus 450. I do believe that there is going to be a more emphasis on accuracy than distance here in this one. So Siwoo, I don't know what the win equity is necessarily on him either, but I do like him. To be lingering there, plus 450 on him. I'm not going away from Nicolai Højgaard, even though he broke my heart last week. Top 20 on him at plus 230. And then another guy that cashed a big ticket for us last week, I'm going to play Alex Fitzpatrick again. This time in the top 30 as opposed to the top 20 with the bigger field and all that. But you're still getting 2-1 on Alex Fitzpatrick. If you're, again, a guy that is really, really great on approach and really, really good with his irons. And I'm not worried about the fact that he is kind of short. I think these shorter guys are going to be fine this week as long as they can keep it in the fairway. He's pretty accurate and is really, really good with his iron. So again, a top 30 there on Alex Fitzpatrick, 2-1 on him. I did start my card. Shortest for me is his brother in Matt Fitzpatrick. And you must know that I really like him this week because I never bet Matt Fitzpatrick. I actually hate betting Matt Fitzpatrick. That said, I didn't like the number attached. I went in, someone gave me a 25% odds boost, which took his 22 up to 27.50. And I thought that was a little bit more palatable of a bet for me on him. If you look, I mean, look, it doesn't lie, right? I mean, I'm going across here and I want to nitpick, but we talk about guys that are green across the board when we look at our models and stuff. And this guy, 12th in the last 24 rounds on approach, 6th around the green, 10th tee to green, 6th in bogey avoidance, which again, we don't want guys 3-putting and all the crazy stuff like that or whatever. 4th in scrambling, 7th in total driving. He's inside the top 15 in opportunities gained and all of that. I mean, he's just a guy that can grind out, I think, a win here in this as long as he's not spraying it completely off the tee, which he has been known to do time to time. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt here with Matt Fitzpatrick. So guy that checked all the boxes there for me. I played Collin Morikawa, and now I will say this. If you're in a circa market, the number's much, much, much better than it is everywhere else. I don't know if I'd have played him at 40. At 51, it was a different story. And so 51 in the circa market on Collin Morikawa. Look, here's the deal. This is a bet on talent. If he was healthy, if he was coming off a T15 last week, he'd be 25-1. But he withdrew and all of that stuff. I mean, look, we saw him hobble around Augusta and still be able to perform there. And this is not going to be as difficult to test as Augusta for sure. So, look, at 51-1, I'll take the gamble that Collin Morikawa, with a couple weeks off, got healed up enough to maybe put together a good performance. Like I said, his odds would be half this if we knew that there was health for Collin Morikawa. My next on the board, I'm going back. He broke my heart last week. Adam Scott, double bogey 17 to fall out of the top 20.
I had that as well.
Instead of T19. It broke my heart. But man, again, you want to talk about green across the board and a guy that is just week in, week out doing it and just getting it done. And we really are focusing here on approach. And when you look at approach, you start thinking irons, and he really just jumps off the page. And so got me some Adam Scott in there. And Kelley, you were on JJ Spaun. I played an outright on JJ Spaun. And again, I will admit the number jumped off the page to me. I do have a brother that lives in a DraftKings market. And last night, JJ Spaun was 94-1. To win this tournament. It's down to 75-1 now, but if you look, Kelley, you said it. I mean, the irons are back. Like the irons are back. And if I believe that this is going to be a gettable course, at least for the first couple of rounds, I think JJ Spaun can find himself towards the top and then basically just try to not lose it over the weekend. Really encouraging last week from him. And as you see, I mean, really his problem it's the same problem that's been for a while, but it's a guy at a number like this. We talk about embracing variance on certain things. And like when you're getting the number like that, I'll embrace a bad putter. I mean, like he gained last week. He gained a few tournaments ago. He gained a couple tournaments before that. Like, yeah, he can't putt, but if he can find a way to putt for a week, then I think that he's going to find himself towards the top of that leaderboard. But that's all the outrights for me this week. Fitzpatrick, Morikawa, Scott, and Spaun. I wanted to hit. I hate that Wes bet Tommy Fleetwood because I actually wanted to take a whole segment. I wanted to take a whole little spot here to trash on Tommy Fleetwood and like the odds that were attached to his name, because we've talked about win equity and stuff like that. And it's like we remember the Tour Championship. So he won the Tour Championship against 30 people, 29 other people, right? Like so he won a tournament that had 29 other people. His last tournament win before that was in January 2024, which was another invitational, Dubai Invitational, against 60 players, 5 of which you could name and you wouldn't recognize any of the other ones that were in that tournament. And then he won the India Championship that had 7 full-time tour pros on it that you would recognize, and then everybody else are like, if Tommy was 40, if Tommy was 45, it's one thing. I don't know. I think the price for a guy that just doesn't win is a little too short for me there on that one. And y'all are both on Cam Young. I just don't know. Cam Young can win anywhere for sure. I just think the price, like we we bet Cam Young because he's so amazing off the tee and like he puts himself at such an advantage or whatever. And I don't think the price is indicative of the skill set advantage that he gets here. He is awesome everywhere that he goes, but I think the baked in number here, and he's gotten suppressed so much off of stuff that we typically need him to do at other courses. And I don't think, me personally, and I could be wrong, I don't think will need to be a skill set here on this course. So it's mainly a price thing there with Cam Young, because obviously at a longer course, sure, perfectly fine. I don't think you're going to have to be long here there in this one. A couple of guys we didn't hit on, I certainly want to talk through real quick. And Wes, you brought this up when we were on break. Bryson, maybe the most heavily bet guy all of last year whenever we would hit these majors and stuff and all of that. And I think some of the shine has kind of worn off of Bryson, and we can even see that in the pricing out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing as high. I've seen as high as 24-1 on Bryson. And I still think he's probably going to get bet, even though we have seen a drift on the two main live guys. I don't want to necessarily disrespect Tyrrell Hatton, who certainly played very well at Augusta last month, could play well this week for all we know. But Rahm and DeChambeau, we did see that drift a little bit upwards. Bryson is certainly the more proven commodity in a PGA Championship, but those have been on a lot of long courses over the years, even though he played very well at Oak Hill 3 years ago, was certainly in contention. But of the two, I would prefer DeChambeau over Rahm, because you got to wonder with the psyche here. Now, they did play in Virginia last week. They at least played stateside, but there's been a lot of breaks in the live schedule, and that Masters, I probably, and I think a lot of us maybe underestimated the lack of preparation that they had. Because remember when they were playing Doral the week before, that's much better prep than going and playing Birdie Fest in Stein City, South Africa, or over in Asia or in Australia where they're shooting 25 under. Now, last week, Lucas Herbert won at 24 under at Live Virginia. So I don't know how much of a test that was. I think it's better prep than they had going in, but I'm not going to fade these guys this week, but DeChambeau was a little bit tempting at over 20, but I don't know. I don't know about these guys this week. I do think the drift certainly has been accounted for, though, in the market with everything that's going on with Liv and what that status is going to be going forward. But
that's kind of where I'm at, Kelly. I look at this and it's like, I don't want to handicap a guy's mental state, but like when he's talking about, I'll just quit golf and I'll just play the majors and I'll just golf on YouTube. I don't know. I mean, like, it seems like he's thinking about other stuff than maybe like going and winning a major. So he could go out and win it and it's fine. And I won't feel bad about not betting him because I don't like all the stuff that's kind of been going on.
Yeah, look, I think it's all fair. I mean, and yes, is there a little bit of out of sight, out of mind for us going on? Sure. Yes. I think that's fair. I think that for anybody that's looking at the PGA Tour every week, like we are, that's fair. But Wes hit it. You guys hit it all. I mean, what's going on with Liv? I thought the Masters performances by both those guys were extremely underwhelming, right? I mean, they were a lot of confidence in those guys coming into the Masters. Neither finished well. Bryce missed the cut, right? Like there's that. And then meanwhile, all these other top guys on the PGA Tour playing so well, like Cameron Young, like Matt Fitzpatrick. Like you said, Wes, I'm not looking to go fade these guys. I did end up betting against Rahm in 2 matchups, though. I think with all of that going on, I'm not nearly as confident in either one of those guys going to put a bet in on either one.
Well, last week's event, by the way, was the first event that they played stateside all year. They played in Mexico City after the Masters, but that erratic schedule has just done them no favors this year.
I agree. It's just, again, if you want to get DFS exposure or something, like in case he just goes out and plays like Bryson, that's fine. It's just not going to get my hard-earned outright dollars this week. That's just not going to happen. Again, guys, all of our picks over at VSiN.com/picks. So go in, become a VSiN Pro subscriber if you have not already yet. For Wes, for Kelly, I am Matt. Good luck on all your PGA Championship bets.